The sharp thud of the front door closing still echoes in my memory, a sound that made the very wooden frame of my home tremble. It was Christmas Day, and my brother Arthur walked in, his arms laden with festive gift bags, his face a picture of serene calm. That calm, I knew, was the quiet before a storm. He'd spent 30 years behind a dark oak desk, a federal judge, dissecting truth from lies with surgical precision. My protector since childhood, the one who'd promised our dying parents he'd look after me. Now he was here, in the house I'd bought with the blood-stained money of my late husband's life insurance. "Merry Christmas," he said, his deep voice a familiar comfort. "I brought gifts for everyone. Where's Margaret? Where's my sister?" The silence that followed was so too heavy it could have crushed the ceramic tiles beneath our feet. My son Caleb stood by the large window, overlooking the garden I'd planted with my own hands 15 years ago. Back then he still called me Mom with affection, not with the distant tone he'd adopted since his marriage. He was impeccable in a crisp white shirt and expensive dress pants, a stranger in my son's face. Caleb turned slowly, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. It was the same smile that had frozen my blood just 2 hours earlier, when he'd thrown my belongings into black plastic bags and told me to leave. A smile that said he'd won, that he was finally free of a burden. "I'd evicted her," he said, his voice terrifyingly tranquil, as if discussing the weather. "She was just taking up space here." The gift bag slipped from Arthur's hands, landing with a dull thud on the expensive cream-colored carpet Veronica, my daughter-in-law, had chosen 6 months prior. The same carpet I couldn't walk on with my old slippers because she claimed they stained it. "What did you say?" Arthur's voice was low, dangerously low. I knew that voice. It was the voice that preceded 30-year prison sentences. Veronica, who had entered my life 5 years ago with a sweet smile and kind words, calling me Mama Margaret, now rose from the large brown leather sofa I had chosen. She was my silent executioner, the architect of my destruction, the snake whispering poison into my son's ear until he no longer saw me with love. She wore a tight red dress, her black hair pulled back in an elegant bun. 38 years old, beautiful, calculating, ruthless. "Arthur, what a surprise," she purred, her honeyed voice now a source of pure loathing for me. "We didn't know you were coming so early. Dinner isn't ready yet." Arthur didn't look at her. His eyes, dark and piercing, were fixed on Caleb. "Where is my sister?" Caleb shrugged, a casual, indifferent gesture that spoke volumes. It was as if I were a disposable object, as if my 68 years, the sleepless nights, the double shifts, the tears, meant nothing. "I already told you, Uncle. I evicted her. This is my house now. Veronica and I need our space. We're hosting important guests tonight. Business people, potential clients. We can't have Mom here doing her old lady things, being a nuisance, taking up space. It's better this way for everyone." For everyone. As if I had agreed. As if they had asked me. As if my opinion mattered regarding the house I had bought with the $150,000 from my husband's death. Money stained with blood and pain used to give Caleb a nice, safe, dignified place to grow up. Arthur's face hardened, his jaw tightened, his eyes narrowed, his hands clenched into fists. But his voice remained calm, cold, deadly. "You evicted her, your own mother, Margaret Thompson, the woman who gave birth to you, the woman who worked 18 hours a day so you could go to a private university, the woman who sold even her wedding rings to pay for your graduation suit." "Those were different times, Uncle," Caleb countered, crossing his arms. "Things are different now. I have my own family, my own priorities. Mom was interfering, always with her comments, her complaints, her needs. I'm not a child anymore. I need to live my life." Veronica moved closer, placing a possessive hand on Caleb's shoulder. Her red lips curled into a small, triumphant smile. "You understand, Arthur," she said softly. "It's just that Margaret and I have very different personalities. She's from another generation. She doesn't understand how we live now. And frankly, Caleb needs to focus on his career, on growing the business. He can't be worrying about his mom all the time." Arthur took one step forward, just one. But it was enough to make Caleb instinctively step back. Arthur Thompson, the man who could make any liar crumble with a single glance, was about to unleash a storm. He pulled out his phone, his fingers flying across the screen. "Benjamin," he said, his voice cutting through the tension. "I need you to prepare an emergency injunction. My sister, Margaret Thompson, has been illegally evicted from her home by her sons Caleb Thompson and his wife, Veronica Thompson. I want them out of that house by sundown. And I want an immediate freeze on all their assets." Caleb and Veronica's faces went white. "What are you doing?" Caleb stammered. "You can't do that." "Oh, but I can," Arthur replied, his voice still calm, but with an edge of steel. "As a federal judge, I have the authority to ensure justice is served, especially when it involves elder abuse and fraudulent asset stripping. That house was bought with Margaret's money. You may have paid for renovations, but you never fully owned it. You defrauded your own mother." The next few hours were a blur of legal jargon, frantic phone calls, and the swift, brutal efficiency of the law. Benjamin, Arthur's associate, arrived with a stack of documents. He explained the charges: asset stripping through fraud, a felony with a penalty of 2 to 8 years in prison, elder abuse, adding 1 to 3 more years, and if conspiracy was proven, Veronica would face similar sentences. Beyond that, civil consequences. Lawsuits for damages, Caleb's professional license as an architect revoked, assets seized. No, 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 Veronica moaned, clutching her chest. This cannot be happening. We are not criminals. We are good people. We have a life. We have plans. We are going to have children soon. You can't destroy us like this. Good plans, I said bitterly, the words tasting like ash. Plans that included getting rid of me first? Tell me, Veronica, where was I going to be in those family plans of yours? In what cheap nursing home did you plan to put me when you could no longer use me? As a free servant? It wasn't like that, she shook her head frantically. We just wanted our space. We just wanted privacy. We weren't going to abandon you. We were going to help you find a good place where you lived comfortably. A good place, I repeated, my voice cracking. Like the street corner where you left me today. That kind of good place. Arthur took my hands, his eyes seeking mine with protective intensity. Sister, he said, his voice low but firm. I know this is difficult. I know he is your son. But you need to understand something. If you let them get away with it now, if there are no real consequences, this will only get worse. People like them don't learn from words. They learn from actions, from real loss, from real pain. And what happens to me? I asked, tears welling up. What kind of mother am I if I send my own son to prison? You are a mother who finally put herself first, Arthur answered. You are a woman who decided her dignity is worth more than other people's comfort. You are a human being who said enough. I looked at Caleb. He was sitting on the sofa, his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking. Veronica stood behind him, her red nails digging into the back of the sofa, her face a mixture of terror and rage. And in that moment, something inside me changed, something fundamental and deep. My whole life had been defined by being a mother, by giving, by sacrificing, by putting myself last. I had believed that was love, that it was the right thing, that my value as a person depended on how much I could endure for the good of others. But looking at my son now, seeing how he only cared about saving his own skin, seeing how there wasn't a single word of genuine regret, only fear of the consequences, I understood something I should have understood years ago. True love does not destroy. True love does not enslave. True love does not turn a person into a ghost in their own life. I am not going to press criminal charges, I said finally, the words coming out before I could think too much. Caleb lifted his head, his eyes shining with hope, but I raised my hand before he could speak. Not yet. There are conditions. I turned to Benjamin. What options do I have that don't involve criminal charges but protect my rights? Benjamin nodded as if he had expected this question. Several options. First, we can annul the fraudulent documents and formally reinstate your 50% ownership. Second, as a co-owner, you can request a court order for eviction based on the documented abusive conduct. Third, you can sue civilly for damages without pressing criminal charges. And fourth, you can force the sale of the property and keep your proportional share of the current value. How much is the house worth now? I asked. With the renovations and the real estate market increase, Benjamin calculated, consulting his tablet, probably between $320,000 and $350,000. Does that mean my share would be between $160,000 and $175,000? Correct. But the house cost me $150,000 15 years ago. They invested in renovations without my permission. Why should I give them half of the increased value when it was my money that bought the property in the first place? That is a valid legal point, agreed Benjamin. We could argue before a judge that the base value of $150, ZU should go entirely to you as the original investment, and that only the additional value should be split. That would give you approximately $200, ZU and $150,000 to Caleb. That's not fair, exploded Veronica. We did all the improvements, we increased the value. You made unauthorized improvements on a property you didn't fully own, interrupted Arthur. That was your mistake. In illegal or unauthorized improvements, the original owner is not obligated to compensate for the full value of the improvements, especially if they were done without consent and with fraudulent intent. The next few days were a whirlwind of legal proceedings. Caleb and Veronica were forced to vacate the house. The judge ruled in my favor, granting me the original $150, ZU's an investment plus half of the appreciation, totaling $200,000. Caleb received $150,000. They were left with enough to start over, but not enough to continue their lavish lifestyle. The house was sold and I used my share to buy a small, cozy condo in a quiet neighborhood. I didn't see Caleb or Veronica for months. The silence was deafening, but it was a peaceful silence, a silence of healing. Arthur and his wife, Patricia, visited often, ensuring I was settling in. They helped me furnish my new place, turning it into a sanctuary. I started taking art classes, joined a book club, and rediscovered hobbies I'd long neglected. I was rebuilding my life, piece by painful piece. Then, one afternoon, almost a year after that fateful Christmas, there was a knock on my door. It was Caleb. He looked different, humbled. His expensive clothes were gone, replaced by simple, worn attire. His eyes held a sadness I hadn't seen since his father's death. "Mom," he began, his voice barely a whisper. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken regret. I looked at him, searching for sincerity. "Sorry for what, Caleb?" "For everything," he said, tears welling in his eyes. "For evicting you. For letting Veronica manipulate me. For forgetting who you were to me. For being so selfish." We talked for hours. He told me about his struggles. How Veronica had left him when their finances crumbled. How he'd lost his job and was working odd jobs to make ends meet. He admitted his mistakes. Not just the eviction, but years of taking me for granted, of seeing me as a resource rather than a person. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I just needed you to know I understand now. I understand what I lost. I understand what you sacrificed for me." I didn't know what to say. A part of me, the mother part, wanted to embrace him, to tell him everything would be all right. But another part, the woman who had been betrayed and discarded, held back. "I need time, Caleb," I finally said. "A lot of time. What you did, it broke something inside me. I'm still trying to put the pieces back together." "I know," he nodded, his gaze unwavering. "And I'll wait. I'll do whatever it takes. I don't want to lose you completely." He left that day, and I closed the door, leaning against it, holding the framed photo of Robert and me. I looked at that image of two young people, full of hope, starting their life together. And I thought about everything I had lived since then. The love, the loss, the betrayal, the rebirth. Arthur and Patricia arrived that afternoon. They saw the new frame on my shelf and raised their eyebrows. I told them about Caleb's visit, our conversation, the small step we had taken. "Be careful," warned Patricia. "Don't let him hurt you again." "I won't," I promised. "But I'm not going to close my heart completely either. There's a difference between protecting yourself and becoming so hard you can no longer feel anything." Arthur nodded with approval. "That is the wisdom you were looking for, sister. It is not revenge. It is not blind forgiveness. It is balance. It is knowing when to open and when to close. It is honoring your pain without letting it define you." We dined together that night. We laughed. We shared stories. We toasted to new beginnings and second chances, and the strength that comes from surviving what you thought would destroy you. Later, when Arthur and Patricia left and I remained alone in my small condo, I sat on my balcony wrapped in a blanket, looking at the city lights. I thought about the woman I had been a year ago. The woman sitting on a cold corner with her belongings in garbage bags, feeling like her life had ended. That woman had believed her value ended where her utility ended. That without someone to take care of, she was no one. That love meant infinite sacrifice without limits or protections. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I was Margaret Thompson, 69 years old, widow, mother, sister, friend, and above all, a woman who had learned that self-love is not selfishness, that setting boundaries is not cruelty, that rebuilding your life after destruction is not abandoning those who hurt you, but honoring yourself. The house Robert and I bought was no longer mine, but I had built something better. I had built a life where my worth didn't depend on how much I could give or endure. A life where I was enough simply for existing. Caleb would have to make his own way back. He would have to prove with actions, not words, that he had truly changed. And maybe someday, when he had demonstrated that the man he had become was worthy of the trust he had broken, we could have a relationship again. Not like before, never like before, but something new, something healthier. Something built on mutual respect instead of unilateral sacrifice. Or maybe not. Maybe the damage was too deep. Maybe some things, once broken, can never be completely repaired. And that was okay too. Because I would be okay either way. Because I had learned the most important lesson of all. That my happiness, my peace, my life depended on no one but myself. The cold December wind blew across the balcony. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply. And for the first time in 69 years, I felt completely free. Free from the weight of impossible expectations. Free from the need to be everything for everyone. Free from measuring my worth by how much I could endure. Free from living for others while fading into the shadows. This was my life now. Small perhaps, quieter, less complicated, but it was mine. Completely, absolutely, unquestionably mine. And in the end, after everything I had lost, everything I had suffered, everything I had survived, that was exactly what I needed. Not revenge, not victory, just peace, just dignity. Just the quiet certainty that I would never again allow anyone, not even my own son, to make me feel like I was less than enough. Because I was. I always had been. It just took me 69 years and a broken heart to finally believe it.